Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. A brief narration of the tragedy of Ashura, adopted from Sighs of Sorrow. 50 years after Prophet Muhammad passed away and left the Islamic nation, the people of Kufa wrote a letter to Imam Hussain and invited him to accede to power because Yazid, the son of Muawiyah, had come to the throne. He was a debauchee, a drunkard, and a murderer who had shed much holy blood. All these factors had made him unworthy of ruling the Islamic society. Imam Hussain accepted their request and left for Kufa with his family. But in the middle of the way, in a desert called Karbala, the army of Yazid under the command of Ibn Ziyad stopped them and cut off water supply from him, his family, and his companions. Imam Hussain proclaimed in a loud voice, "Do you know me?" They said, "Yes, you are the son of the Holy Prophet." Imam Hussain said, "Do you know that the Prophet of Allah is my grandfather?" They replied, "Yes." Then he asked, "Do you know that my mother Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad?" They said, "Yes." He said, "Do you know that my father is Ali ibn Abi Talib?" They replied, "Yes." He said, "Do you know that my grandmother is Khadija, the first Muslim lady of the nation?" He continued, "Do you know that my father Ali was the first man who accepted Islam? His knowledge was deeper than that of everyone else, and his patience and tolerance was higher than that of anyone else, and that he is the master of every Muslim man and woman?" They replied, "We know all of this, and yet we will not leave you until you taste death in thirst." Then after several incidents and exchanging many dialogues, then came the night of Ashura. Imam Hussain gathered his companions. After praising Allah, he turned towards them and said, "Now verily, I do not find companions better than you, nor any family more righteous than my family. Now the darkness of the night has covered you, so make use of it. Each one of you may hold the hand of one of my family members and get dispersed in this darkness, and leave this place because they do not want anyone except me." At the moment, all the companions and family members of Imam Hussain spoke up unanimously. "Why should we do like that? To remain alive after you? May Allah never bring such a day. O son of the Holy Prophet, what will people say about us? And what should we say to them? That we left our elder, chief, Sayyid, Imam, the son of the daughter of the Prophet? O son of the Holy Prophet, we should never leave you. Rather, our lives will guard your life until we die before your eyes. Whatever befalls you will fall on us too. How wretched is the life after you." During that night, the night of Ashura, Imam Hussain and his companions remained busy in worship and prayer. The next morning, on the day of Ashura, Imam Hussain mounted his horse and stood up before the army of the enemy and asked them to be quiet. They became silent. Then he praised Allah and gave an impressive speech. Then for some hours, there was a heavy collective war, which rendered a number of companions martyred. The companions of Imam Hussain, one after the other, exhibited nice firmness and waged a perfect fight against the enemy and sacrificed their lives. A few hours later, when thirst overwhelmed the children, Imam Hussain and his brother Abbas felt compelled to fetch water. Abbas did not go alone. Imam Hussain also accompanied him towards the Euphrates River in the hope of obtaining water for the campsite. These two courageous and strong brothers fought while backing each other on the battlefield. Imam Hussain was about 60 years old, but he was among the most famous, unique men in terms of his power and courage. His brother, Abbas, was in his 30s, with all those outstanding fighting skills and legendary power. These two brothers fought side by side and back to back in the middle of the enemy's army, moving into the waves of enemy lines, breaking them. They did so in order to reach to the Euphrates in hope that they can get some water. It was in the middle of this challenging battle that Imam Hussain realized suddenly that the enemy had created a gap between him and his brother. It was also in the middle of those tough moments that Abbas got closer to water and reached the Euphrates. He attacked the guards and killed 80 men until he finally entered the river. He filled the water pouch to take it back to the camp. Anyone would agree that he had the right to drink a fistful of water to quench his own thirst, but he demonstrated his loyalty in that moment. When Abbas was filling his palms with water, when he looked at the water, he remembered Imam Hussein's lips dried of thirst. He also remembered the little girls and other children screaming out for thirst, and he could not allow himself to drink water. He poured the fresh water back into the river and left. He placed the water pouch upon his right shoulder and turned towards the tents. It was when he was leaving the river that the enemy targeted him. 4,000 men who were guarding the Euphrates surrounded him from all sides and shot arrows at him. He fought with them until a savage soldier of the enemy severed his right hand with his sword. Then he placed the water pouch upon his left shoulder. He then severed his left hand from the rest. Then Abbas had to hold the water pouch by his teeth. Then an arrow pierced the water pouch and water started flowing from it. That was the moment when Abbas lost his all hope. Because he couldn't get water for the thirsty children, he was ashamed to turn back to the tents. Another arrow pierced his heart, and he fell off from the horse and called out, "Oh, Master, find me!" Suddenly Imam Hussain heard his brother from the middle of the enemy's army calling out to him, "Oh, brother, help your brother." When Imam Hussain came to his head, he saw him covered in blood and dust. Imam Hussain said, "Oh brother, you are the commander of my companions. Oh brother, now my back is bent." Imam Hussain wept very much over his brother's death. Imam Hussain cried on several occasions in Karbala. This shedding tears is not out of despondency. This is due to the very strong emotions, and Islam nourishes emotions in humankind. When all his companions were martyred, and none except his household remained, Ali Akbar, the son of Imam Hussain, who was much more handsome than all the other companions and was the most pious in terms of morals, sought permission from his father. Imam permitted him. Imam Hussain began to cry, then hopelessly had a glance at his handsome son and wept with lowered eyes and said, "Oh Allah, be witness, surely a young man rushed to the battlefield who is the most similar person to your messenger in appearance, nature, and manners. Whenever I longed to look at your messenger, I would look at him. When he spoke, his voice resembled the voice of the Prophet. His character and manners were the most similar to the Prophet, equally magnanimous, equally gorgeous, and equally gracious." Then Ali Akbar rushed to the battlefield and waged a furious war and sent a number of unbelievers to hell. Then he returned to his father and said, "Oh dear father, thirst has almost killed me, and the weight of the armor has sapped my strength. Is any water available?" Imam Hussain wept a lot and replied, "Oh my dear son, where from can I bring water? Put on some more resistance. Very soon you will meet your grandfather Muhammad, who will give you a drink after which you will never feel thirsty. Ali Akbar went back to the battlefield and gave the greatest fight. An evil soldier threw an arrow which made him fall down. He cried, "Oh, Father, accept my farewell. May Allah protect you. Here is my grandfather who sends greetings to you and says, hurry up to us." Then a jerk ended his worldly life. Then the enemy's army chopped up his body, so that Imam Hussain could not take back his body to the camps. Imam Hussain came and stood by the chopped body of his son, placed his wounded cheek on his face and said, "May Allah kill those people who killed you. What made them bold enough to go against Allah and violate the honor of His Prophet? Life after you is nothing but a spit." Thereafter, one after the other from the holy household of Imam rushed to the battlefield and won the honor of martyrdom. At the moment, Lady Zainab, the sister of Imam, brought Ali Asghar, the 6-month son of Imam, to him and said, "This child of yours has not had water for the last 3 days. Please ask some water for quenching his thirst." Imam Hussain had to take the baby in his arms, although there was very little chance the enemy would give the baby a cup of water to soothe his thirst. Nevertheless, Imam Hussain held the infant, then lifted him up for all to see. The baby's conditions were so heart-rendering that it would definitely made everyone to feel pity for him, no matter how cold-hearted they were. Imam Hussain sought mercy purposely. He said, "Even if you don't have mercy towards me, have mercy towards this little baby." A father would do so for his little baby at a time of distress. Imam Hussein's fatherly instincts allowed him to ask mercy for water in order to save the life of his little infant. At the moment, Imam Hussain, probably in agony, gloom, and distress, raised the baby in his hands and was talking to the enemy when he felt something strange. He noticed his baby, who was droopy and still because of thirst and hunger, could no longer hold his head. Suddenly his head hung to one side, and all of a sudden he started floundering in his father's hands. Imam Hussain looked at him. He saw the enemy's trident arrow had stricken the baby in the throat, and blood was flowing from Ali Asghar's neck. An evil monster called Harmale committed such a crime. Imam Hussain wept a lot and said, "Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice." Finally, when Imam Hussain saw the slain bodies of his companions, he himself became ready for fighting with the enemy. He cried, "Is there anyone to defend the family of the Prophet of Allah? Is there anybody who knows Allah and fears Him regarding our rights? Is there any helper who would help us seeking the Allah's rewards?" When there was no answer, Imam Hussain challenged the enemy to come and fight with him. Then whoever came forward was sent to hell by Imam Hussein's hand. It continued until he killed many of them. He said, "Martyrdom is better than accepting disgrace, and humiliation is better than burning in hellfire." One of the witnesses said, "By Allah, I had never seen a man who had lost his family members and companions and bearing the sorrow of all calamities, yet showing so much courage and bravery on the battlefield." The enemy continuously launched collective attacks on him. He responded all of them, as a consequence of which they fled from him, like a flock of goats flee from a wolf. Imam fought continuously till the time the enemy came between him and the womenfolk and separated them. Then Imam shouted at them, "Woe unto you, O followers of the family of Abu Sufyan! If you have no religion and do not fear the hereafter and resurrection, then at least be free and noble in your world." Shamr yelled, "O son of Fatima, what are you saying?" Imam Hussain said, "I am fighting you and you are fighting me, and this is no fault of the women. So until I am alive, these renegades and unwise people should not disturb my family." Then the enemies began to attack on him again, and he continued fighting. In the meanwhile, he sought water but could not get it, until thirst really weakened him. Then Imam halted for a moment to take rest, when a stone thrown by the enemy hit his forehead. Imam tucked up his shirt to prevent the flow of blood from his head. Then a poisoned trident arrow pierced his blessed chest. Imam raised his blessed head towards the sky and said, "O Allah, you know that these people are killing a man who is the only son of the daughter of your messenger on the surface of the earth." Then he fetched out the arrow from his back, and blood gushed like a drain pipe. Then a cursed man came and uttered bad words to Imam, and hit the Imam's blessed head with his sword. It cut the top of the helmet, reaching the skull. The helmet overflowed with the holy blood. Imam Hussain called for a robe and bound his head with it. He put a mitre on his head and fastened his turban over it. After a short pause, the enemies returned to Imam and encircled him. When many wounds were inflicted on the holy body of Imam Hussain, and his body became like a porcupine, a mean-minded, cursed fellow inflicted a forceful hit on the flank of Imam, which made him fall on the right side from his horse. And then he stood up on his feet with great difficulty. Lady Zainab came out of the tent and yelled, "Oh, my brother! Oh, my leader! Oh, my household! I wish the sky had fallen down on earth. I wish the mountains had come down to the plains scattered." Shamr cried out to his soldiers, "What are you waiting for?" They attacked Imam from every side. A cursed man inflicted a wound on the left shoulder of Imam. Another fellow struck his sword on the back of Imam, which caused Imam Hussain to fall down on the ground headlong. After this, he sat up with much difficulty and again fell on the ground and rose up and walked again. Another cursed fellow inflicted a wound with a spear on the cavity of Imam's pharynx and then pierced his spear in the chest. Thereafter, Sanan shot an arrow which pierced the Imam's neck. He fell again and then sat up and pulled out the arrow from his blessed neck. But thereafter he cut the lower part of his neck with both of his palms, which were filled with his holy blood. Imam Hussain threw his holy blood towards the sky, and not a drop of it fell back on the earth. He colored his head and beard with his own blood and said, "I am going to my God with such a hair dye, while my rights have been violated." Umar ibn Sa'd told the man who was on his right, "Come down and relieve Hussain." A cursed man named Khuli went forward to cut off the head of Imam Hussain, but he could not. He began to tremble. A cursed monster called Sanan came down and struck his sword on the holy throat, saying, "By Allah, I am cutting your neck, despite knowing that you are the son of Allah's prophet and the best offspring in terms of parents." Then he cut off the holy head. Imam Sadiq said there were 33 wounds of spears and 34 wounds of swords on the blessed body of Imam Hussain. After Hussein's martyrdom, angels arrived and wept and said, "O Lord, this is your Hussain, the chosen son of your messenger's daughter." In response to these words of angels, the Almighty Allah raised the shadow of the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi, and said, "I will take the revenge of Hussain by his hands." After the martyrdom of Imam, a severe storm blew, and the sky was covered by red colors, making everything invisible, and people feared that the divine wrath had descended, so they had to pause for hours until the storm passed away. Then, intending to steal the holy Imam's clothes, the enemy soldiers came forward. The robe of Imam, which was made of fur, and his armor were snatched. The sword of Imam was also plundered. An evil fellow pulled up the holy shirt of Imam and wore it himself. Afterwards, he suffered from leprosy, and his hair also dropped off. Imam Hussein's pajamas were looted by an evil soldier. He became bedridden after both of his legs were paralyzed. His turban was snatched by another evil man. He also became a lunatic thereafter. Imam's shoes were also looted. For robbing the Imam's ring, a beast soldier cut off his finger. No one but women and children were left in the camps, except for Imam Sajjad, the eldest son of Imam Hussain, who was critically ill. All women and children were worried about Imam Hussain and what would transpire next. Thereafter, Shamr ibn Ziljoshan attacked the tents of Imam Hussain, saying, "Give me fire so that I may burn down these tents with all the inmates." Thereafter, the enemies drove out the honorable ladies from their tents, bareheaded and barefoot, arrested them, and fired the tents. They also looted the jewelry and golds, tearing the ears of little girls to snatch their earrings. The ladies said, "For Allah's sake, take us to the place of the slaughter." When they reached to the battlefield, they beat their own faces and pulled their hair. They mourned in such an intense manner. While these women had lost a loved one, a man like Hussain. Lady Zainab was heading the women towards the site of the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. When she arrived, she spotted the body of her beloved brother on the blistering grounds of Karbala. Instead of showing any weakness or grievance, she went to the corpse of her beloved brother and called out her grandfather. She said, "O Messenger of Allah, peace be upon you, take a look at your Hussain, who is covered in blood, with his body hacked up. O my dear grandfather, O great Prophet, look towards the hot desert of Karbala. This is your Hussain, who is now covered in blood and dust." Thereafter, Umar ibn Sa'd cried out to the enemy, "Who are volunteers to stampede horses on the body of Hussain?" 10 evil monsters replied. These 10 cursed soldiers trampled the holy body of Hussain under the hooves of their horses and crushed the bones of back in front of the body of the holy Imam. Historians searched the biographies of these 10 fellows. They found that all of them were bastards. Umar ibn Sa'd, in the afternoon of the day of Ashura, sent the holy head of Imam to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad by Khuli and ordered that the heads of other holy martyrs be sent by Shamr and 2 others. Then he moved to Kufa and Damascus with the remaining persons of the holy family of Imam Hussain. They chained and whipped ruthlessly the household of the Holy Prophet, including women and children, and Imam Sajjad, who was critically ill. In addition to all those sorrows and griefs, they were treated just like slaves. When they reached the bazaar of Kufa, while Lady Zainab was also held captive, she gave an astonishing speech. The words were as firm as steel, and the meaning flowed like a river, and it influenced hearts and souls. In such conditions, Lady Zainab shook history with these words. Then they left for Damascus. When they arrived at Yazid's palace, Lady Zainab spoke in front of Yazid with such strength that it both humiliated the enemy and the hardships which the enemy had imposed. Blood gained a victory over the sword on the day of Ashura, and Lady Zainab was the source of that victory. This triumph was due to the role she played the day after Ashura. She branded the enemies with permanent shame and turned the supposed victory into a defeat. She proved that this is possible, to turn feminine morality and modesty into glory and great jihad. At the night in Damascus, Ruqayyah, the little girl of Imam Hussain, who was 3 or 4 years old, and other detainees of the fight of Karbala, were in a ruined house nearby the Yazid's palace. Ruqayyah was crying so hard. She missed her father and longed to see him once more. Cruel soldiers of Yazid took the head of Imam Hussain for her to be calmed down. She hugged her father's head and started talking to him about all those calamities she suffered. She cried and cried until she died of sadness and incredible tribulation she suffered on the way. Imam Hussain brought his dear ones to the desert of Karbala in order to clarify the truth. He knew what was going to happen, yet he brought Lady Zainab, his wives, his children, and his brothers with him. That shows the importance of promoting Islam. If someone comes across a ruthless sultan or king who mixes up halal with haram, the right with the wrong, they should clarify the truth through their words and actions, just as Imam Hussain did, and he paid the price for it. Hussain saved humanity and morality forever. He distinguished the right path from the wrong with his unbelievable courage and sacrifice. And this is the mission of the 12 Imams.